The Tampa Bay Rays last season had a record of 99 and 63. However, that was not good enough to win their division, with the AL East being a behemoth. They ended up finishing in second place, having to go to the wild card series as a wild card team where they got swept. Unfortunately for them, that's not how they would have liked it to go, but it caused a lot of talking points among this Rays team. There were a lot of changes in this offseason, and this Rays team is a very, very, very interesting and intriguing team entering 2024. So without further wait, let's dive straight into it. My name is Derek. I am here with John. You're watching Bleacher Brawls, and this is your Tampa Bay Rays 2024 team profile. First things first, let's talk about some of the key players for this team. Obviously, there is a ton of talent on this team, and there's also a lot of underrated talent too, if you want to talk about some of them. But I'll hand it over to you, John. First, who are three key players for this Rays team, and out of those three, who's one you would like to expand on or elaborate on as a key player for 2024?
Well, Derek, as you know, I absolutely despise the Rays and their organization. I can't stand them. I don't like Kevin Cash. I didn't like him when he played for the Red Sox, and don't like him even more now. So this is a really hard video for me to do because I don't want to see any of these guys do well. Unfortunately, there is some talent on this team. One guy was Isaac Paredes, who had a really good season last year. I had him on my fantasy baseball team, which is what I was following him all season long, and he was a productive player. And it really hurt the Yankees when he played the Yankees as well. So this is a guy who is probably going to continue to be a Yankee killer. I'm sure he's a Red Sox killer too. So I expect big things out of him. I guess another guy would be Jose Caballero, Caballero. I don't pronounce things well, folks. We shouldn't get into it, but we all know Wander Franco is dealing with some issues and probably is not going to be playing baseball again. And you're going to need somebody to step up and be the shortstop. And according to Fangraphs, unless you have different information, he's projected to be the shortstop. Not anything spectacular projected as far as his stats. I don't know what his fielding's like, but the Rays are really going to need some production out of shortstop, especially at least on the defensive side of the ball, because that's what they're known for, defensive side of the game. I'm still in football talk, folks. And then lastly, I absolutely can't stand Randy Arozarena. I think this guy's just all about himself. One of the few things Luke and I agree on is just what a piece of trash Randy Arozarena is. But Randy Arozarena is talented enough to carry this team. We've seen him do it before, and that's going to be the guy who really, really, unfortunately, is going to be the guy that makes this team go, in my opinion. So he's, I guess, the main factor of this. And just an honorable mention to that dump of a freaking baseball park, Tropicana Field. That's just going to cost teams games, those stupid catwalks. The Rays should really just get a real stadium. And that's going to be the deciding factor, because how many games are going to get decided out of a ball taking a bounce that just happens to go in the Rays' favor. So the biggest help as far as the Rays are concerned is that dump Tropicana Stadium.
For me, key players, Yandy Diaz. I'm hoping he does well because I have a $5 bet on him to win $200 to be the MLB hits leader in 2024. So please play well, continue playing well. But I kind of want to jumble two guys into one here. And I want to talk about Ryan Pepiot and Taj Bradley. Obviously, Pepiot, big prospect with the Dodgers coming over in the Glasnow trade. And then Taj Bradley, one of their top pitching prospects who made his debut last year. I think these two guys have to be key for this Rays team. And there's one main reason for it. A lack of the rotation carrying over from last year in terms of, you look at Shane McClanahan, Tommy John surgery. Drew Rasmussen had an internal brace procedure on his elbow in July of last year. So McClanahan's no-go for 2024. Rasmussen, maybe he'll pitch in 2024, but even then, you still never know. Jeffrey Springs had Tommy John end of April last year, so he probably won't pitch until at least the All-Star break. So you look at this Rays team, and it's like, where's the pitching going to come from? Yes, they have Eflin, who was good last year. They have Savali, although Savali struggled a little bit once he got to Tampa. They have Zach Littell, who somehow, after getting, dropped by the Red Sox by being a terrible reliever, goes to Tampa and becomes a decent middle-of-the-rotation starter. I don't know how. It's the Rays, though. But it's Ryan Pepiot and Taj Bradley that I think make or break this rotation because both of them have the upside to be very good starting pitchers. But the Rays need them now more than ever because you don't have those guys, like I said, like McClanahan, Rasmussen, Springs, and you don't have Tyler Klass now, who they traded to the Dodgers, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a second when we get to offseason moves. I think for Taj Bradley and for Ryan Pepiot, those two are going to have to be key for the Rays because if those two pitch well, now Zach Littell isn't your number 3 starter. Now he's your number 5 starter. And if you get a Rasmussen back or you get a Springs back, the rotation looks really, really good. So I think for the Rays, those two guys, the two of them together, are both super, super key for the Rays team. And when you look at their numbers last year, Taj Bradley, struggled a little bit, 5.59 ERA in 104 innings, but it's 104 big league innings. He's got that some experience under his belt now. And then Ryan Pepiot started 3 games for the Dodgers, 42 innings in all of his appearances, had a 2.14 ERA last year, so pretty solid. I think those two guys are going to be key for the Rays next year. Well, this upcoming year, actually. Let's move on to some of their offseason moves. As I mentioned a little bit, Tyler Glasnow trade, where they traded Glasnow and Manuel Margot for Ryan Pepiot and Johnny DeLuca. They also traded Luke Raley for Jose Caballero. They traded Andrew Kitteridge for Richie Palacios, which, have the Cardinals not learned anything by trading with the Rays? I don't know. And they also signed Ahmed Rosario. So I'll hand it over to you, John. Which one of those moves do you think is going to be important for the Rays in 2024?
I don't know. I don't know if any of them will really be that difference making. I was thinking about that before. I'm like, if anything, maybe they should still be looking into making another move for starting pitching because, like you said, there's a lot of question marks there. And I was actually wanting to bring this up to you because I know the Rays don't like spending money, but do you think there's a possibility of a guy like Jordan Montgomery going to there on a 1-year prove-it deal, kind of like they did a few years ago with Charlie Morton, another guy that I think is a good comparison where really good postseason pitcher and somehow didn't get a long-term deal, went to the Rays, and I think he ended up getting paid after the fact. So do you think could you see the Rays making some kind of short-term splash to shore up that starting pitching? Because that's what I think would be the difference maker as far as an off-season or kind of in-season now move.
I don't think so because I'll also bring up another name who was injured last year from Tommy John surgery who's going to be should be ready to pitch this year, Shane Baz. That's another guy who they have who I didn't even mention who could play a part in that rotation next year too. So I don't think so. I don't think it fits the Rays. I don't think it makes sense. I think the pitching side of things is the least of their concerns this year, if I'm honest, in terms of starting pitching, because I think they're willing to roll with the guys they have because they know that, okay, yeah, we have guys injured, but if they get Rasmussen and Springs back middle of the year, like, that rotation is ready to go. Outside of, the rotation and whatnot, I will bring up a couple of moves they made because I think it's important. I do like the Jose Caballero move a lot. Very under the radar. I know you were talking about him earlier. Elite defense. Played second base mostly last year for the Marlins. I'm not the Marlins, the Mariners. M teams. My memory's horrific. But the Jose Caballero with the Mariners last year played mostly second base. Was very good defender, elite defender at second base, arguably, and still was very, very good at shortstop in a limited amount of time. The problem with the Mariners for him is he's not like a crazy. He was about league average, 96 weighted runs created plus, just below league average. But all that's in singles. There's no power there. He's not going to be. I don't even know if he's going to hit double-digit home runs. Maybe he'll get double digits in a full season, but even then, that's a stretch. Played 104 games, but you also got to think only 280 plate appearances. Put up a 2.2 F4 in 280 plate appearances. That's because he's very, very good defensively, so that was a big calling card for him. And then also, too, you look at his base running, 26 stolen bases as well in those 104 games. Also a 10% walk rate. Another big thing for Caballero outside of that is, you look at his outs above average, 94th percentile last year. Sprint speed, 90th percentile. Doesn't swing and miss a ton. He doesn't have a percentile ranking because he didn't have enough plate appearances to qualify, but I'd say he's probably around 60th percentile or so with Fred, so he doesn't swing and miss a ton either. So I think he kind of just fits what the Rays need in a shortstop. And then Richie Palacios, I want to touch on, because he's a very interesting one. Looked like he was kind of falling apart a little bit in the Guardians farm system, but struggled in the big leagues in 2022, struggled in AAA with Cleveland in 2023, ends up going to St. Louis and kind of breaks out in 40 games in AAA, 126 weighted runs created plus in 40 games, and 32 games in the big leagues last year are 120 weighted runs created plus for the Cardinals. Cardinals don't really need outfielders. The Rays, though, are geniuses. You trade 1 year of Andrew Kitteridge and get a guy in Richie Palacios who still, I think, has 5 years of team control left, I think, something like that. It's outrageous. And Palacios, great at recognizing pitches. Great pitch recognition for him. Last year, actually, it was kind of wacky when you look at his numbers. He had one of the lowest K rates in baseball. Now, he doesn't have the plate appearances to qualify or anything, but a very low K rate, a very low whiff rate, and a very low chase rate. Like some of the lowest in baseball in all three categories. That'll work perfectly for the Rays. Chuck him in the outfield in a platoon kind of situation like the Rays do. I think he could play definitely like 80 games or so, and I think he's going to be very, very important for that Rays team next year. Because that's a guy, like I said, doesn't swing and miss a lot, doesn't expand outside of the zone, and because of that, he doesn't strike out a lot either. So I think that's a guy that's going to be important. Last but not least, expectations for this Rays team. John, what do you have?
Well, it's hard for me to take my fandom out of it. So my expectations are they struggle, deal with the injury bug, and miss the playoffs. And for once, finally have a losing record against the Yankees. It feels like it's been forever since that happened. So those are my expectations for the Rays. Expectations, call them what you will, but I'm going to put it out there in the world and say miss the playoffs, injury bug, and a below 500 average against the win percentage against the Yankees.
I think when you talk about expectations, I think when you look at the Rays, I think their internal expectations are to compete for the division and make the playoffs. I'm higher on this Rays team than most. Maybe it's because I've lived in Florida and I kind of had a little bit of a closer eye on them, and I can kind of see what they're doing a little bit, and I get it in some sense because I'm looking at them and I'm like, Jose Caballero. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, they need a shortstop. He's great defensively, can run really well, gets on base a little bit. Like, it just feels like a Rays move, right? I'm excited. I hope Junior Caminero gets a lot of time. I did a player profile on him recently, a couple weeks ago, so check that out. But I think, like I said, I think the expectations are to compete for the division and to make the playoffs. And with that, I think that's a perfect place to wrap it up. So make sure to check out all our other team profiles. Check out that Junior Caminero player profile that I just mentioned that I did a couple weeks ago. Make sure to check that out. And for John, my name is Derek. Thanks for tuning in to Bleacher Brawls, and we'll see you next time.